to catch a wild animal, it's not like a dog or a cat. You can't just say, come on, come over here, have a treat. You've actually got to physically go out there and usually dart them, sometimes from a helicopter.
Everyone's dream to actually go to Africa and see the wildlife and being there. And now on top of that, you're actually doing conservation work.
It was a long path getting there because I actually finished school, studied sports science, didn't use my degree, got a job as a completely unqualified veterinary nurse in a clinic. And my parents are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know.
Hello, my dog lovers. I am super excited today because I have my lovely friend and colleague, Dr. Sally Armstrong here, and you're watching Get to Know Your Vet. Hi, Sally.
Bye.
I usually don't like reading off the script who you are. It's just much better to ask you, who are you? And if someone didn't know you, what would you tell them?
Ooh. Well, obviously my name. So I'm Sally and I am a veterinarian, obviously. I'm from Australia and I studied in Australia and graduated in Australia, but I am an Aussie veterinarian now living in South Africa and I have been since 2019. So that's who I am and where I'm from and where I'm currently living.
And I know that you are a real dog lover, meaning that until a few days ago, he had 7 dogs, and he texted me and said, "Hey, we have another dog. Tell me, how does it happen to have 8 dogs in the household?"
Well, I think it's funny. I always say to people, when you don't have kids, as in like human children, I think you go a bit dog mad. And I think that's what's happened with my husband and I, because when we met, neither of us had children and we both had dogs. And up until recently, as you said, we had 7 dogs. And then actually one of my clients who had a Hungarian Vizsla puppy was struggling a bit. She had 3 young kids and her husband started doing really long hours and they can be quite intense, full-on little pups, those little Vizslas, because we've also got 3 adult Vizslas. Anyway, she was devastated because they adored the puppy, but she said to me, knowing full well that my husband adores Vizslas and that obviously I love dogs and we love dogs, do I know anyone who might want to adopt their puppy? So that puppy had a home within about 5 seconds after I told my husband, and that's our new baby, and that makes number 8.
This actually really takes me to the logistics of it all. Like, how do you walk 8 dogs in South Africa? Like, I've never been to South Africa, and I'm really looking forward to get there in not August, September for conference and also safari with you that is adjacent to it. How do you walk 8 dogs in South Africa?
To be honest, it is quite tricky. It's actually getting even more challenging because I live in Cape Town and Cape Town's actually getting busier and busier. It's been very noticeable the last couple of years. Like, it is an amazing city and there's a lot of people moving here. There's actually a lot of foreigners, especially Europeans, moving here, a lot of Germans, and it's just really noticeable. A lot of people, a lot of traffic. And our dogs are good. And I actually walk 7 of them. I don't walk the older Vizsla. He's about 10 and he's a little bit older. He goes to work with my husband instead. But twice a day, every day, I walk all of the others off the lead and they're all really good. They're all really social. They've obviously been socialized a lot and they're getting out and about, but trying to sort of find places now where I'm not going to run into a lot of other people because it's a bit daunting, I think, for some owners and their dogs, I guess, when they've got one, to see like me and my 7 dogs walking towards them with my pack. So yeah, it is quite tricky. I've got lots of different spots that I go and I try and pick what time I go and where I go depending on the time of the week. For example, the weekends are quite tricky to try and find somewhere where I can walk them all off lead and they're not going to freak people out because there's 7 of them. But yeah, I managed to do it, but it's just getting harder. But I feel like they need that. We don't have a huge space where we are right now and that they really look forward to their walks. I mean, it's obviously makes up their quality of life. And yeah, so we've just bought a farm, thank goodness. And until we move to the farm, they're just getting their walks regularly and I'm keeping them happy. But it will actually be nice to have a bit of that pressure off and see them running around free on the farm, and yeah, I'll have a bit more time to myself.
That'll be. Do you have any? Will you have any wildlife on the farm, like wild animals or?
We'll have baboons passing through. Even in Cape Town, they just stroll down some of the main streets, so they're everywhere, and they actually cause a lot of chaos. But they're well protected. But yeah, they're sort of everywhere, and depending on how used to humans they are, sort of depends on what mischief they get up to. But we'll have baboons definitely passing through the farm. Not quite sure how the dogs are going to react to that. They can be quite dangerous if they feel threatened. So we're putting up electric game
Okay.
fencing and stuff. But
Yeah.
at this stage, we won't actually bring any wildlife onto the farm. But it's obviously in an area where there's a forest, so there's going to be different types of antelope species, and I know that there's wild pigs there and things like that. But yeah, unfortunately, I won't be bringing any rhinos or anything like that onto the farm. I'd like to, but yeah, donkeys, probably not rhinos.
Everyone, stay tuned because we'll be talking rhinos. Because Dr. Sully, besides being a veterinarian in the not conventional, but traditional practice sense of word, he also conserve or help with conservations and conservation. You converse with animals, but you also conserve them, right, and help them to survive in this crazy world. um you speaking of baboons reminds me of a situation when my mother, my sisters, and I went to Africa. We wanted to celebrate my mother's big birthday, and we took her to Africa. And one day I walked in the room and my mother was on her iPad, just kind of, on the deck, and I see a baboon basically like being in the room raiding the sugar bins, right? Like they have these little sackets of sugar for
Yes,
coffee. And my mother
yes,
was completely oblivious,
really.
watching her iPad, and there was a baboon basically raiding our sugar. So that was an interesting one. But
It
take
happens a
me
lot
back.
here. They raid
Does
people's
it?
houses. It happens very often in just where I live all the time, especially certain areas. They literally have lost their fear of people, and they break into the kitchens and they steal the bread, and they, yeah, they cause a lot of mischief.
Uh, yeah, it wasn't a rare accident. It was a normal behavior of baboons. I get it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so you grew up in Australia. Take me back to the beginning. What was the moment, the exact scene when you knew animals weren't just a passion, but calling, that you wanted to
Yeah.
become a vet?
It's funny actually. I never really knew that I wanted to actually specifically be a vet. I did know from quite a young age that I wanted to work with animals. Um, Definitely knew that, but I just wasn't quite sure how. And I'd always had animals in my life growing up, always had dogs as part of the family growing up. My mum used to have a golden retriever that she used to take to shows, and I was really quite young, and I used to go around to a lot of the shows with her and enjoyed that and looked at all the dogs and learn all the different breeds. And so yeah, dogs have always been a big part of the family. But I used to watch and be quite inspired by National Geographic, and I just grew up reading so many books about wildlife, and I just ended up just dreaming about actually working with wildlife in South Africa. So that was sort of what I ended up having my heart set on eventually, when I sort of realized that I love animals and actually I do want to make a career out of working with them somehow. So yeah, it was a long path getting there, because I actually finished school, studied sports science, and did a degree in
Wow.
human movement. Finished that and decided I don't want to do this. I want to work with animals. And then didn't use my degree, got a job as a veterinary, completely unqualified veterinary nurse in a clinic. And my parents are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Because I just went to university because I felt like I should at the time, where I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I'd always been really sporty. And I actually used to surf professionally when I was in my 20s. So I just thought, I'll just go to uni and study sports science. But when I really realized what my passion was and wanted to make, yeah, a career out of working with animals, I decided, whilst I was working in the veterinary clinic as a vet nurse, and studying zoology by correspondence, because I started doing that at the same time. And I was thinking I'm going to be a zoologist. So I was working part-time in the veterinary clinic as a nurse and then studying zoology part-time. But then as I worked more in the clinic and got to see what the vets were doing in the vet clinic, I thought, actually, I think maybe that might be a good idea if I can manage to go down that path, because hopefully if I can do that, it'll give me the option of working with domestic animals and hopefully wildlife as well. And I'll come out with a professional qualification, because I'd finished my sports science degree and it wasn't easy to get work, and was sort of a bit of a vague sort of qualification. And I thought, I was a bit worried if I finished a second degree in zoology that I would end up also sort of with a qualification that didn't really guarantee me work and getting to where I wanted to go. So anyway, I thought, okay. And then I had to work really hard in zoology to bring my marks up to have any chance of getting into veterinary science. Because when I was at university previously and studied human movement science, I just used to have the theory, P's get degrees. And I used to spend as much time as I could surfing and just do as little as I had to do to pass. But that came back to bite me because it dragged down my average when I was trying to get into vet science. So I had to really work hard in the zoology degree to like bring the marks up to have a hope of getting in. And once I had my heart set on what I wanted to do, I was super determined and focused. And I actually managed to get into vet science. I was shocked. I didn't expect to first go, and I sort of had a backup plan. But I actually, I managed to get in. And from that point on, I knew that's definitely what I wanted to do. And then, put my head down, and, it's a long time studying. I actually took a year off before I started because I knew that I'd be pretty, wouldn't have much of a life once I started that degree. So I took a year off and traveled a bit. And then that's when I first came to South Africa. I was away for 4 months. And then I thought, okay, now I'm back and I'm ready to put my head down and work hard and hopefully graduate and become a vet.
It's kind of interesting and admirable how capable you are of pivoting, just kind of like turning and just kind of going, following the river where it guides you, as opposed to being stuck or feeling like, well, I'm afraid. You definitely are daring, from my perspective, more daring than I am. And I kind of do the same thing, but I think that you're just like one level up from me. And what did it cost you? Like when you moved to Australia, not meaning materially how much money it cost you, but what did it cost you? What did you lose and what did you gain by moving to Africa?
It was also a long journey and a long path to get to South Africa. There's a whole story behind how I got here, because I didn't move straight from Australia to South Africa. And to be honest, what you said about being brave, I'll be honest, I really think that my whole life I've just been really passionate and focused and determined on what I wanted to do. And I actually never, getting married, having kids, having a white picket fence and a house was never on my radar. It wasn't even a priority for me. It was like, I remember when I was 16 thinking, okay, I'm trying to work out life and why I'm here. And I just thought, before I die, I want to make sure that I've done something purposeful and something with meaning. And what gave me meaning was animals. And I used to see stuff that was going on, especially with wildlife. And it actually used to really upset me and break my heart. And I thought, they're getting a raw deal. I actually want to spend my life being a voice and helping to conserve them. So I just followed my passion and went where I thought I should go to get to that point, which was a bit of a dream for quite a long time, to end up in South Africa. And I did lose my way quite a bit. I was living in Australia. I had a mobile veterinary business, and then I ended up moving to Sri Lanka because I got married. I met someone while I was on holiday in Thailand, a British guy. And he was living in Dubai, but then was about to be posted to Sri Lanka. And we stayed in touch for a year, and I got stars in my eyes and I guess fell in love for the first time and got a bit sidetracked on my my route. And so, I ended up in Sri Lanka and got married, and I lived there for nearly 4 years. and that was another whole story, quite challenging. Rescued 4 street dogs whilst I was there, and when it was time to leave, I could not leave them there. I'd become quite attached to them and brought them back from quite a lot of disease as puppies. So anyway, left Sri Lanka, and then from there we moved to Dubai, and then that was another different world. And it wasn't easy getting the dogs there, as you would know how hard it is to travel with your pets. And then anyway, ended up living and working in Dubai for about 2 years, and actually moved to South Africa from Dubai. I separated from my ex-husband and I'd always wanted to live in South Africa, and I just thought, okay, that's it. I didn't want to go back to Australia, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, but in the end I'm like, okay, I want to move to Cape Town. And then I just had to work out how I was going to get there and how I was going to get my dogs there. And yeah, that's sort of the long way around how I ended up finally here.
It's so intriguing and interesting how he, like, the direction was set, right? But as life goes, it's not a straight line from Australia to South Africa. Like, there's a lot of kind of adjustments of the course, and it seems like you've been making the adjustments really well. I so appreciate your candor, and you're obviously clearly not a person who just kind of gets stuck in small talk, right? Like, you just dive right in. And I think that our dog lovers and our community, all of you guys, probably appreciate it as much as I do, because the genuine connection and conversation that is really deeper. This is what Get to Know Your Vet is about. So I really want to commend you on being so open. And this is actually one of the reasons, you guys, Dr. Sally and I kind of got along so well in Mallorca. I spoke there at the conference, and we met. I was like, immediately, we actually understood each other without really knowing each other for a very long time. So, and since then, it's been like that too. So it's everyone's dream to actually go to Africa, almost everyone's dream, go to Africa and see the wildlife and being there. And now on top of that, you're actually doing conservation work. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and what it consists of, and maybe even what I can expect when I go to the bush with you, because I'm a little worried.
I'm so looking forward to you coming, because I think you're going to love it. And the thing is, it's so different working with wildlife compared to working with domestic animals, whether it's dogs, cats, cattle, horses. It's like a whole new different job. Obviously, you're still being a vet and doing your work as a veterinarian does, but it's just so different. But so with the working with wildlife, it's funny, like, I sort of have stuck to my path, and as I just said, I sort of fell off it for a little while, but I think I always ended up where I wanted to be, because at the end of the day, whatever happened, and even though there was a few blow-ups in between, I still ended up just following my heart and being true to myself and not really giving up, and probably being a little bit too determined and a bit stubborn at some points. But I just absolutely loved my time here when I came over in my final year of veterinary science, and for the first time did a lot of wildlife conservation work. I was like, that sort of sealed the deal for me. I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is what I want my life to be. This is what I want to do. I'm no interest in getting married, having kids. This is what I want. And I didn't really end up exactly where I thought I would be, but sometimes the grass is always greener, and I think a lot about it. And I've still ended up working with wildlife, but I'm not sort of living out in the bush being a wildlife vet every single day. But what I'm doing is running these safaris. And the reason that I started doing that is because I just had such a ball when I came over here before I was living in South Africa as a vet student, that I kept coming back to South Africa, I think nearly every year after I graduated in 2008. And I just couldn't get enough of it. And it wasn't really a simple task of just moving here and working as a wildlife vet, because it's actually very challenging to get work here. It's a competitive industry. It's even more difficult if you're a foreigner, and it's also very difficult being a woman, because it's generally quite a male-dominated industry. So I ended up staying in Australia and putting together these safaris because I wanted everyone to be able to experience and be inspired by these animals. And I was actually looking after a baby rhino at the time on a wildlife vet's farm, and its mother had been shot and killed by poachers, and the baby rhino had been shot in the head. And they had done surgery, so it survived, and they removed the bullet. But I was feeding this baby rhino 4 times a day, and it's so vulnerable, and it just killed me to know what was going on with the rhinos. So I just really
Mm.
felt this overwhelming sort of desire to want to try and help them. I didn't know how, because it wasn't as easy as just moving over and working here as a vet. I was going to have to sit these huge exams, which are renowned for being difficult because I didn't study in South Africa. So I guess to compensate, I put together these safaris, and what I would do is bring mostly at the beginning my friends and family over here to experience the behind the scenes stuff that goes on with the wildlife, as far as what the vets are doing and what the conservationists are doing specifically to try and save the rhinos,
Uh-huh.
and give people that sort of amazing experience, but also educate them about what's happening and see how they're inspired by the animals to then want to help save them. So they would basically pay to come over and participate in just say a rhino dehorning procedure, which is one of the strategies to deter poachers. And that obviously pays for that game reserve to have that procedure done, therefore protecting that rhino. So it was sort of something that I was just doing on the side as a passion. And then just over the years, I just ran, I guess, a few more safaris, and people sort of had a wonderful time and told their friends. And yeah, now I'm living here, and I guess focusing more on that. And since I've lived here, because I've actually been living here, I've been able to have the opportunity to get out on those reserves and do a lot more conservation work, and most of it's voluntary. It's not really paid work.
Um,
Like I said,
mhm.
I'm not living here working as a wildlife vet like there are a lot of wildlife vets here, but I'm here mostly doing voluntary conservation work and getting out on the reserves, and when I'm in Cape Town running my mobile business. So
Okay, so
yeah.
you combined it, and it's kind of that's another thing that unites us, right? Like we have the core work that we still love, and then there's something that we do on the side. Like you do the conservation, and I love talking about hormone replacement therapy and all that, and knowing that we make a difference. And so
Yes.
it's really actually fun to. I get really stoked about seeing people who are kind of doing similar things in a different format, not the same format but different version of the format, right? So it's really fun. So what is a day like if you go in the bush and you participate in this kind of work? What does your day look like? What can we expect?
Um, well, a lot of early mornings, especially when the weather's warm over here, because to catch a wild animal, it's not like a dog or a cat. You can't just say, come on, come over here, have a treat. You've actually got to physically go out there and usually dart them, sometimes from a
Mm.
helicopter with a dart gun that has an anesthetic in it. So they're obviously doing a lot of running, and if you do that when it's too hot, they get capture myopathy, which is obviously really dangerous. So you do a lot of stuff in the early mornings before it gets too hot, just to take that
Mm.
pressure off the animals. And there's a lot of different, obviously, procedures that are involved with conservation work with all of the different species. So mostly what I've done is work with rhinos. I've done, work with other wildlife, but the majority of it has been with rhinos, and doing procedures that employ strategies to keep them safe from poachers, which is in the
Mm.
past and for a long time has been dehorning them. So if I was to explain that procedure, it would be arriving at a site with the conservation team, a whole heap of people. Obviously, the wildlife vet's there, and he basically gives everyone a debriefing on safety and what's going to happen. And if there's some guests there, overseas guests there to observe or participate, he explains how everything works, how the drug works, how the dart gun works, and obviously safety. And then we all basically get in the game viewer. The wildlife vet will often get in the helicopter with the ecologist, who often has a telemetry piece of telemetry equipment that can actually pick up where the rhino is based on the signal from the collar on the reserve, because the reserves are often huge. And sometimes you're flying around for a long time in the helicopter before you'll find them. And then, yeah, once they found a rhino, for example, the wildlife vet will dart the rhino from the helicopter, and these helicopter pilots that do game capture are very skilled, and they manage to get them quite close. And then you wait for the anesthetic to take effect, and you can see the signs of that happening. And it's obviously all very exciting. And once that rhino, for example, has sort of gone down with the anesthetic, the team will get off the vehicles that are on the ground that have been keeping in touch via radio with the helicopter pilot and the vet in the air. And they're obviously directing you to where they are on the reserve, because they can obviously see everything from the air. And anyway, once the rhino is under the anesthetic asleep, the first thing you do is put a blindfold on the rhino, and then you often put earplugs just to decrease all the stimulation and just get them in the right position, because that's the thing with wildlife work too. It's so unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. That rhino might go down in a whole big thicket full of thorny trees, and they've got to then get the chainsaws out and the machetes and clear the space and position the animal. That's another thing. Sometimes they go down in the wrong position, so their breathing is compromised. And you've got a rhino that weighs 1 ton or sometimes more. So that's why there's so many people there to physically help get that rhino in the right position, so its breathing's not compromised. And once the wildlife vet is happy that the rhino is stable and under the anesthetic, you'll start to go about your procedure, whether that's dehorning the rhino with some sort of electric saw, or most often and most commonly these days, what the new strategy is now putting these new sophisticated AI collars, or sort of like anklets that goes on their front foot on the rhinos, which aren't just a collar to track the rhinos, but they actually work off algorithms developed by a very clever young electrical engineer. And it baselines the normal behavior for a rhino. So once that, and it works out what's normal. So once that rhino's exhibiting abnormal behavior, just say it's laying in a spot for too long, there's an app that'll send out an alert, obviously communicating with the collar to the whole anti-poaching team, and they'll be able to go straight out there and make sure that that rhino is not being poached or has not been pursued by poachers. So that would be generally what you would do if you were going to go out and collar a rhino, and you never know what's going to happen. It's very exciting, and it's a bit nerve-wracking because sometimes things can go wrong, because like I said, it's unpredictable. But yeah, when it all goes smoothly, and it's really quite satisfying. You wake the rhino up with the reversal, you inject it into its ear vein, and then you all go and get back on the game vehicles, and just stand there, sit there and watch the rhino.
Then you run. And then you run.
Well, yeah, you do actually run if you're the vet standing there reversing it, and it's already like a little bit awake, and you're not quite sure how awake it is and how long it's going to take for the reversal. You run, especially if it's a black rhino, because they are completely different to a white. Their personalities, and they can get cranky.
We don't have rhinos in Canada, but we have black bears versus grizzlies, and that can be really tricky as well. So I understand. The interesting part is, and I'm not sure whether I told you, but my very good friend and classmate from the vet school actually participates in rhino restoration program as well. They've sent like dozens of rhinos to a park in Botswana, I believe. And we helped them about 5 years ago with the transport. We kind of co-finance the transport because we have a little donation fund within our company. And so we did that. And they also participated in obtaining and freezing the embryos of the North African white rhino. So it's actually a very unique situation. And you guys have to meet, because he's really amazing as well. He lives in the Czech Republic, but they basically have been breeding rhinos and sending them back to Africa. So I find it really intriguing how the universe connects us all. And I've seen rhinos obviously through him, but I've seen a rhino from a distance in Africa, but I've never seen a rhino from up close in the wild. So I can't wait to actually maybe possibly see them.
You will.
Um,
I can actually guarantee you will. Make sure of that, and you'll be able to get right up close to one while it's sleeping. And it's really mind blowing to be able to touch them and feel their skin and hear them breathe. And it's actually very humbling and so inspiring as well. So
isn't
I'm
it?
so looking forward
Yeah.
to.
Now I'd like to go to your other part of the practice, the one that you do on daily basis in Cape Town. Uh, what is your setup? And if someone lives in South Africa and they didn't know about you, how can they get in touch with you? What do you do? What do you love to do? What is more challenging to do?
Yeah, I guess I guess I my work is a little bit different to the everyday vet because I'm mobile, so I don't actually have a clinic. So I basically work out of my car and cart everything in my car, all the drugs and things. So it's very different. It's a lot more personal because you're going into people's homes. And I actually, before I left Australia, I was actually doing this in Australia for 4 years as well. And I didn't actually have much of an intention of doing this when I first moved here. But just after I moved here is when COVID hit. And I was going to focus on my safaris, but obviously no one could come and visit. So that plan went out the window. And I started visiting people's pets in their homes because obviously no one really wanted to go out and about, and none of the vets, wanted to go and have contact, and there were all these rules. And I remember there was this one lady who was desperate to have a vet come to her house to euthanize her cat, which is a very common thing that I do because having that procedure done at home is often a lot less stressful for the
Mhm.
cats and dogs, and therefore for the owners, and peaceful and
And
relaxing. And it's sometimes very challenging to get that set up and that atmosphere in a clinic that's busy and noisy and when you're around the public. So anyway, I did that, and after that, word just got around that there was a vet that was willing to come to the house, and my business started accidentally
and
almost.
and uh,
And because I just got busy doing that during COVID, and COVID ended up going on for a while, and I've just kept kept doing that, and I've actually realized that I enjoy being a vet doing it that way. I don't particularly
mm,
enjoy working in a clinic, to be honest. I've done a
no,
lot of locating and worked in clinics for a long time as well, and I find it there's a lot of pressure, and I find that you don't get enough time to be thorough, and you also don't get much time to calm an animal down if they come in and they're scared and they're trying to bite, which is usually because they're scared. I like to
um,
just, instead of poking and prodding
and
them straight away,
um,
just, get down to their level and just talk to the owner while you're feeding them some treats and just let them smell the room. And, all that takes time, but you don't get that luxury when you're working in a clinic. You might have a
uh,
20-minute consult and then you got to get the next person in. So with what I do, I like it because I can be my own boss and I can take as long as I want. And I generally allow about an hour for a house call when I go to someone's home, and I like to be thorough and I like to do my job to the best of my ability and make sure that
and
I don't miss anything. And yeah, it does, for me, doing it that way takes a lot more time, but I get a lot more enjoyment and satisfaction out of my work doing it that way. So I know it's not for everyone. And I know there's a lot of vets that just don't like doing house calls at all, but I've been doing it for a long time, and I actually meet a lot of really lovely people as well. And
mm,
I don't ever go without the treats. So often the animals actually
dogs
like
and
me.
cats love you.
I honestly,
Auntie
I'll be
Sally is
halfway.
coming. Who is the
Yeah,
vet? Auntie
if
Sally.
if I'm halfway to a house and I'm like, oh, I forgot the treats, or I forgot to
Oh,
order more treats, even if it makes me late, I'll go by the pet shop and I'll buy some treats because I feel so guilty if I turn up without the treats, because that's how you gain their trust and put them at ease, especially when you've got to give them needles and poke and prod them. But if they love the treats and you give them treats, they forget about that and they associate with something positive. So the next time you've got to go, I think they're just like, oh, here's the treat lady to see me again, and they're happy and they're relaxed, and it makes me able to do what I need to do without stressing them out, and it just makes it easier to do it anyway, and it makes me feel better because I don't want them shivering and shaking in fear when I turn up. So it makes me feel more loved as well. So
So you're basically the female South African version of James Harriet, like going around the farms and the houses and so on. Once again, I just it is so interesting that when I talk to you, I have zero doubt that what you're saying is your real world. That what you're saying is actually a description. There is nothing contrived. There is nothing fake, and this is actually, you know I wouldn't say rare, but it is actually, I really appreciate it. Also because there is such a tendency to corporate nature of medicine now, and that,
Long.
veterinarians and clinics are sometimes pushed into systems that they didn't really plan to be in, commission based production and all that stuff. So if people talk to you, I think that, and everyone who's listening, there are vets like Dr. Sally, but I think that you're kind of like, in a very special category when it comes to how much you exude the passion for what you do and how much you love it and how much you appreciate the connections with the animals and people. And I can really relate to it because when I sold my clinic, then during the transitional period when I was trying to figure out how I can be the most useful, I was doing house calls as well, and I was able to bring some of my clients from the clinic based on the agreement to my house call practice, and I really enjoyed it. And the best part is when you actually see people being really empowered, and you see, let's say that they've had four pets, four dogs, and every generation or every next
Mhm.
dog lives a little longer and longer. And there's nothing like it. I think that we have a really unique opportunity, right, to actually get to know not only the animals but also the people and get a real
Totally. Yep.
lessons in life. Tell me about, like, give me a story that really stuck with you with a client and their pet. Um, what comes to mind?
There's lots of stories. Is there any particular type of story? I mean, there's many stories. There's happy stories. There's a lot of sad stories.
Give us a happy story for the world that we live in. I think that that's
Yeah.
important.
Okay. Well, I'll say I'll be honest and just I I probably sometimes overshare, but I don't know how not to be genuine. And I think sometimes I'm actually a bit too honest with people, and sometimes I'm just blunt too, because to be honest, for me life is short and I can't be bothered sugarcoating things or beating around the bush. So I just I genuinely say how I feel and what I believe, and I actually think that that also allows me to gain people's trust with their pets, because I don't pretend to be genuine. I really do care about people's pets as if they're my own, and I think that comes through. I don't have to fake it. It's just, yeah, it's my whole life. I just adore them. I don't have children. My dogs are my children.
You have
So
children, but they're four-legged.
yeah, they're just furry. Um, so yeah, it's really nice to be able to build that relationship with people, and have that trust and have the time to talk to them. And I guess when it comes to telling a story, like, there's a lot of really sad stories. And as you know, this job can be very emotionally intense and there's a lot of pressure. And often you've got to put your own emotions aside and get the job done, and then, educate, but also counsel the owners. And I do a lot of home euthanasias, being a mobile vet as well, which
Right.
can actually get quite challenging, but at the same time, it can actually give people and animals so much more peace by being in their own environment. So there's a lot of stories associated with that. But the story that I want to tell, I guess, relates to almost a newfound passion with this side of my work. Is and this is where you come in. I guess I started following you because everything you were saying that I would see on your social media would really resonate with me when it comes to nutrition and raw feeding and stuff that I genuinely believe makes pets healthy. And I had a dog. It was one of two dogs owned by a family who moved here from the UK, and lovely, lovely dogs. And one of them was having seizures quite regularly, and she was already on the anti-seizure medication by the time I met
Mhm.
her, and I think it had helped a little bit, but she was still having seizures, and it's obviously quite, confronting and scary for owners, and there's always a risk that there's going to be permanent damage. Anyway, obviously, I always talk to owners about nutrition and what are you feeding your pets because I believe that it's such a huge influence on their overall health, just like it is for people. And to cut a long story short, it's really nice when people listen to you because they were feeding their dogs a lot of commercial pet food that I didn't believe was good for this dog's condition. I
Mm,
do a lot of research. If I think I don't know something about something or if I'm not having any luck with difficult cases, I try to do as much research as I can and make sure I'm giving them all the options that I think might make their pet healthy or disease
mhm,
free. And eventually they cut all of the commercial pet food and they ended up going onto a raw food diet that I'd recommended, plus following some other advice that I had suggested in regards to studies that I'd read on what can help dogs that are having seizures. And this dog, I'll be honest, it didn't completely stop seizuring and it was still on the meds. But after they made all these complete changes, after a period of time, this dog went from maybe having seizures once every 2 weeks to once every 6 weeks. And this dog had another dog that it lived with. And apart from that dog, having far, far less seizures and having better quality of life, these two dogs looked amazing after being on this
mm,
on this
mm.
good quality diet. The owners they said all their friends were like saying, wow, they are just looking so good. Their coats are shiny. They'd lost weight, which they needed to because they were a bit on the older side, and they had sore joints because they were a bit heavy. So they put on muscle, and their coats were shining. And yeah, it was actually just so satisfying to see the improvement. And yeah, the fact that she had a much better quality of life because it had really decreased the number of seizures she was having because of those really healthy changes that they had made, mainly to
Mhm,
the
mhm.
nutrition. So
You know,
that's a happy
I
story.
so resonate with you on that level because once he starts seeing the transformation, it happens quite fast, right? Like it's not
Mm.
months. Like just recently, my dear friends and neighbors actually lost one of their dogs, and it was a obviously very stressful and very sad situation. But at the same time, I kind of decided to put my focus after this tragic situation, put my focus on guiding them and try to nudge them with their other dog because they started to worry that their other dog will get sick as well. So it was a good opportunity. And within pretty much like 3 weeks of just simple steps like switching to a natural food, raw diet and vegetables, and teaching them how to make the food and how to, how to formulate it and how to make it easy. And also adding omegas and a little simple
Mhm.
detox that I formulated, which is called Liver Tune. Just those 3 steps have made the dog being so different. It's kind of
Wow.
crazy because I just saw her a few days ago and from this kind of greasy coat, dense body, like kind of little swollen dog. I have this dog who wants to go for walks. She is slimmer. Her body feels so much better. She doesn't smell. And this is just 3 weeks. So I'm really
Wow.
hoping that I'll be able to just kind of add a little bit every week or two just to kind of teach them the whole program because yeah, it's really fun to actually see that we
It's
can make a difference, right?
It is, isn't it? And it like
Yeah.
when you genuinely care and you're genuinely putting everything into your work because you really genuinely want the best for people and their pets, and you actually the
Mhm.
proof is in the pudding, and you actually see the transformation, and you see how much happier the dogs are, how much quality of life they have that they may not have had beforehand. You have a lot of tough days in this job as well, a lot of really tough days,
Mhm.
hard
Yeah.
days, but it's those days where you get to see those transformations and you get to see how happy the animals are and just thinking, well, that change is probably going to extend that dog's life and it's going to make its life better and more comfortable as well. So
You know,
yeah,
I
it's
I think that it may come from also I've been intrigued by by this kind of desire to see the difference, to make a difference, because ultimately, wouldn't it be easier if we were just kind of selfishly going through life and, living hedonistic life? But I do think that there is something genetically encoded in us humans to kind of want to help others because it just feels good. And, it's
Yeah.
so great to actually see that we're not living our life in vain, because it's a really amazing gift. And if we make a difference, that really makes us feel good. So
It is. Yeah.
ultimately it is, I just say it's selfishly selfish, because we like to feel good about it as well, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah. And the hardship of practice also makes us better human beings, right? Because we see lives evolving in front of us, and we see how good or bad decisions are made and what the result of these decisions are. So yeah, it's I feel really grateful for that part of the experience. The negatives, they're so hard, and every time it happens, actually piece of you goes with them, with the animals.
Yes. It
How do you
it
deal
does.
with
Yeah. It tests
how
you,
do
I
you
think,
deal
is
with
where.
euthanasia in general? Like, what is your kind of way of neutralizing the discomfort, the stress, the pain of those situations?
Oh, it's not easy. Like, obviously, it's such a highly emotional time and decision, and often not an easy decision to make and to even know when it's time. And as a vet, often that responsibility gets put onto you. And, sometimes we don't know either. We obviously do our best, but for example, often I don't have the luxury of doing the tests that I want to do, um, to actually confirm that, well, actually, this is a bad prognosis or a poor prognosis. So, this animal's only going to deteriorate. So, yes, this is the right decision. Sometimes all you do is you see a poor animal that's suffering and has been suffering, and what you've done hasn't worked. And you've actually just got to make a call because you know that you can't just leave this animal to suffer. But I find it really difficult in that I don't give up easily, and if I can extend that animal's life and give it quality of life back, it's a huge decision to make. You don't want to end the life, but you don't always get the opportunities to do what you need to do as a vet, to run the
Mhm.
tests and get all those answers. And you often have to
Mm.
make decisions without the answers, which I find really difficult because, yeah, like I said, it's a life. It's like, for me, a lot of the owners with their pets, they're like their children. They're their whole world. And here you are about to have a situation where, there might be someone living on their own, an older lady who's lost a husband and her kids,
Mm.
and all they have is their pet. So
Mm.
it's really, really tough. And obviously you try and come up with the words to just comfort them as much as you can and try and
Mm.
make them feel a bit better. But I mean, I am a very empathetic person when it comes to people as well. And my heart breaks because when you're seeing people suffering about, emotionally when they've got to say goodbye, I've been through that too. And it's really difficult to contain your own emotions and then just, yeah, try and make sure everything goes smoothly and just try and say something that can be meaningful and just make them feel a little bit better. Obviously, saying it's the kindest decision, which obviously you're always putting the animal's best interests before yours because you never want to make the decision and it's so tough, but you're doing it for the animal. So it's sometimes very hard to find the right words because you're also under a lot of pressure actually doing the procedure and making sure that everything's going right and you don't have anything go wrong because it's already such an emotionally charged situation in
Mm.
someone's home.
Mm.
So it can be, yeah, it can be very stressful. Um, but at the same time, I used to get a little bit depressed about it when I was a new grad and hadn't done many, or because, yeah, you weren't used to it and it's a lot of pressure and you're constantly experiencing sad emotions yourself and of owners. But when I think about it, I'm like, if I can just make a really tough situation a little bit easier for the animal and therefore for the owner by making it calm and relaxed and doing it inside someone's home instead of them having to go through the ordeal of getting this poor old
Mhm.
sore dog into the car, out of the car, into the hospital, where often, if it was me, I don't
Mhm.
really want to spend my last hours in a hospital. Who likes going to
Yeah, yeah,
hospital after
yeah.
your dog? So I just feel quite honored and also grateful that I can help the animals and the people with that process and just make it a little bit easier. But it is difficult and it is a very emotionally draining
Mm.
and tense. But it's part of the job. And And I think it's really important in the final moments that it's as calm and peaceful and stress-free as it can be. I think that's super important. And I meet a lot of people who've had not so pleasant experiences. So I try and
Mhm.
do
Uh-huh.
the best I can. But yeah, it's not always
Yeah,
easy.
but I feel it, you're not taking this lightly. It's very clear that empathy is actually something that you're born with. They say that it's actually in the genes, right? That it cannot be acquired that easily.
Well,
And when we run across people or when we meet people who are not as empathetic or capable to dial into other people's situations and emotions, that can be difficult to witness, but I can see that you're the right person, the right job, and it seems to me that you also are able to somehow process everything that goes on to a certain degree. Obviously, it's never easy, and I know that from my own experiences. Knowing that you actually have the capability of ending someone's life, right,
meanwhile,
is just like, even though if it's with the good intention and with the best intention, it is kind of like a power that we almost didn't bargain for, and we have
well,
it because, and it's part of our job. So it's not easy. I
why?
agree with you 100%. But
It's not.
speaking on something a little different, this is Get to Know Your Vet, and even though you've been very candid, I have this set of deck of cards, and it's been a tradition to kind of like dive into them, at least a few, because we've kind of been very candid here. But I'm gonna ask you, you can have a choice of either me kind of like mixing them up a little bit and then just pulling somewhere in the middle, or you can actually say left, right, inner, center, outer,
It
whatever,
feels
and
like
I'll
it's going to be like truth or dare or something.
the other thing is that he can choose not to answer. That's or we
No,
can just cut it
like,
out.
no, I'll answer. Well, yeah, unless it's really
So
embarrassing.
this is my left hand, just in case it's reversed on the camera. I'm not 100% sure.
I'll pick your right hand and the inner.
Okay, there you go. And it has two sides, by the way. So we're gonna do two
Oh,
sides.
okay.
Okay. How would you like to improve as a person?
Well, there's a lot of things to improve. So, how long do we have? um, well, I think I'm definitely well aware of my faults. And I think one of the things that would improve me as a person, and people that know me would probably agree, is that I'm not very patient. So I can be a bit impatient. So I think if I learnt more patience, which I feel like I have come a long way, because I feel like this job also forces you to learn to be quite patient. But yeah, to answer your question, I think if I was to learn to be more patient in certain situations, that would improve me as a person.
And I always thank you for your answer. And I do my best not to exclude myself from these questions, because then asking personal questions is obviously personal. And so I try to subject myself to the same, almost like, scrutiny, to make sure that I kind of practice that too. In my world, is that living on an island is sometimes very difficult to find the right workers or the people who will help you. And I'd like to be able to actually find, like, recognize a little better who is a good person for the job and who is not. And when they don't do a good job, how to kind of assert my boundary a little more. Like, I'm
Mm.
generally a pleaser, which kind of leaves me sometimes with a job that is unfinished or not done well, and it really frustrates me. So I'd like to really learn how to navigate this better, how to set my boundary, and maybe feel a little less frustration with someone who is not as much of a perfectionist or pays attention to detail. So
Um,
that's definitely my challenge here,
mm,
and it comes to
um,
anything. You know, it's actually, I'm not sure how it is in South Africa, but living on an island is actually um, it's challenging. Everyone wants
mm.
to go to the beach and surf or do whatever, and they just don't want to do the work. So,
Yeah, yeah, I guess it makes sense because it's like, yeah, I'm sure it's like an island vibe where everyone's in, you know, cruise mode and sun and surf and sand and,
yeah,
all those distractions. And yeah, yeah, that would be frustrating too, to be someone that is, I'm a bit of a perfectionist as well. And, just being able to block those distractions out and just focus. Whereas a lot of people, yeah, aren't sort of on the same level, and yeah, finding the right people to align with your values as well. And then I totally get you not getting frustrated when that's challenging.
I kind of find it frustrating that I'm frustrated sometimes.
Yeah, I do.
Facing
Yeah, I know what
ourselves
you
and
mean.
our weakness is
Well, that's
anyway, there's a
why
second. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say that's why I say I think I should try and be more patient, because that's what happens with me. I get quite frustrated, and you're just like,
Right.
no,
Yeah.
Sally, just be
Right.
patient. Don't get frustrated. So I totally get it.
And kind of realizing that not everyone has the same type of brain and the same processing, right? And
Totally.
yeah, but I think that what I think is really frustrating for some other people when they can't really find something that they love, right? Like if you have a gardener, let's say, who loves the garden and loves the plants, then it's easy. But when they're just doing gardening because it's a job and they have to make money and pay their bills, like that's a
Mm.
disaster in a life. And
Mm.
I feel
Yeah.
you and I are lucky because we never doubted that this is what we want to do
I
because
was
it's
just
just so
about
dynamic.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I was about to say, I feel lucky that, we're doing something we're passionate about. And I actually say to people, it's just a bonus that you get paid for it, that you've actually
Mhm.
got a job that you're passionate about, and you're just not doing the daily grind from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, hanging out to get to the weekend, the 2 days a week out of the seven where you actually enjoy life, and then dread going back to work. And I actually remember having that thought as a teenager, just thinking, what's the point of life if that's what it's going to be like? That's exactly how I think as well. And I feel so lucky to be able to find your passion, because sometimes it's not easy for people, and some people never do. And a lot of people definitely don't get paid to do their passion.
Mhm. Mhm. So everyone who's listening, if you're doing something that you don't love, and if you know that you lose yourself in something else completely and get immersed and forget about time, maybe time to just kind of gradually transition and reassess. Like I don't know how you eat, Sally, but I feel that kind of sudden amputations of life are not really that great. Like gradual transition is a little better because then you still can look after your family or your furry or human family after all the affairs while you're transitioning, and that's what I believe
Mm.
in. How about you?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's hard. It's hard to just like make a decision and then do something cold turkey. And I think it makes it. I mean, depending on the specific situation, but I think it's a process, isn't it? It's a journey. First of all, you've got to make it or recognize something first. If you're not happy, it's like, well, actually, why aren't I happy? And then act on it, and then make a decision, and then actually carry it out. And I don't think there's many instances where you can just sort of do that straight away. It's quite a process. Involves a lot, and a lot of, yeah, time and thinking. And yeah,
It's
I agree.
risky, right, to do sudden changes, and but at the same time we have to actually live our lives with the least regret. That's what I think is the best way because so
Yeah.
many times we run into quotes. That's what I wanted to say, where people say how much they regret the things that they haven't done, and
Yeah.
mostly not spending time with those they love, whether it's animal friends or human friends and family. So
Wow.
yeah, I think it's a cool thing. Be grateful. Let's be grateful together. And Sally, you'll be busy now because I'm gonna ask you to give 8 plus 4 hugs to your family and your husband. So that's +1. 8 plus 4 plus 1 means 13. That's an interesting number, a good number. And we will be in touch. Take care. Sending you a big hug too.